Today, we're going to talk about Depeche Mode, specifically the guy who was the secret architect of their iconic sound, and the really fascinating, kind of tragic story of why they tried to write him out of history. So, what does happen? To figure that out, we're going to explore the absolutely pivotal and yet so often overlooked role of a guy named Alan Wilder in, well, one of the biggest bands on the planet. Okay, so our story kicks off in the early 80s. You've got this young synth-pop band from a town called Basildon in England. They are right on the edge of becoming huge. But there's something missing, a key ingredient they need to really take over the world. I mean, their early hits, super catchy. Just can't get enough. But the core guys, Martin Gore and Dave Gahan, they were restless. They knew they wanted something more. A sound that was way bigger, darker, more complex than just simple pop songs. And that missing piece, it was a guy named Alan Wilder. Now, he was different. A classically trained musician, a total wizard in the studio. And he starts to quietly transform what the band could be, not from the front of the stage, but from behind the mixing desk. He was the translator, the guy who could take their big ideas and actually make them real. And this quote here, it says it all, really. He was doing the screwdriver work, the nitty-gritty, unseen technical stuff that no one else wanted to do. And right there, that separation, the craftsmen in the back and the rock stars out front, that's where the seeds of all the future problems were planted. So let's talk about where this all led, because it built into Wilder's single biggest contribution, creating that legendary, dark, cinematic, industrial sound that is Depeche Mode. I mean, just look at this. It really shows you the shift, right? They went from catchy, bright synth pop to cinematic, industrial, shadowed. This wasn't just them getting a little better. No, this was a total reinvention of who they were. And this really hits the nail on the head. Martin Gore, he'd write the songs, the blueprint, the melody, the words. But it was Wilder who built the cathedral they echoed through. He constructed the whole world, the whole vibe for those songs to live in. He wasn't just playing keyboards, he was the sonic architect. But here's the thing. As the music got more complex, more ambitious, more famous, the relationships inside the band started to crack. It's kind of ironic, right? The very thing that was making them so incredible was also what was starting to tear them apart. So on one side, you have Alan Wilder's insane perfectionism. I mean, the guy was the engine of the band. He'd be in the studio until dawn, tweaking every little sound long after everyone else had gone home. But from the other guy's perspective, that dedication didn't feel like passion. It felt controlling. It felt dictatorial. Dave Gahan once joked he'd make everyone miserable just to get the perfect snare sound. It created this really tense, cold vibe in the studio. And that was the real problem, wasn't it? A total clash of personalities. You had the meticulous technician, the instinctive songwriter, the chaotic frontman, and the distant peacemaker. It was like 4 different worlds colliding, and for Wilder, it just felt like all his hard work, all his effort, was just met with a shrug, indifference. Okay, so this all comes to a head, the breaking point. It happens during the making of what many people think is their masterpiece, the 1993 album Songs of Faith and Devotion. So the idea was that all go to this villa in Madrid, get the chemistry back, but it turned into a total nightmare. The whole thing just disintegrated. You had addiction, depression, guys not even showing up. The band, as a functioning unit, basically stopped existing. And who was left to pick up the pieces? Alan Wilder. He was basically left alone to build their most ambitious, most complicated album ever, all while the entire world around him was just catching fire. I mean, his own quote says it all, like trying to build a cathedral while the roof kept catching fire. And if you think the recording sessions were bad, all that chaos just spilled right onto the tour. The Devotional Tour is legendary for being one of the most insane, debauched tours in rock history. On stage, they were untouchable. But off stage, the whole thing was collapsing, and it was pushing Wilder right to the edge. And for him, this must have been just devastating. He wasn't just watching a band burn out. He was watching this incredible thing he had poured his soul into, this thing he had meticulously built, turn into a complete and utter nightmare. So, by 1995, it was over. After years of feeling like a ghost in his own band, unseen, unheard, unappreciated, Alan Wilder did the one thing nobody thought he would do. He quit. He just walked away. But it wasn't a snap decision. You can see it here. It was a slow burn. Years of unseen work, the breaking point in Madrid, the tour from hell, it all added up. His resignation was just the final, inevitable step. And his resignation letter, wow. It was so professional, so calm on the surface, but when you read between the lines, it was this devastatingly honest takedown of how the band actually worked. He said it was never a democracy. He was basically pulling back the curtain and showing everyone that the shiny machine was totally broken on the inside. But you know what the craziest part is? The most painful thing for him wasn't even leaving the band. It was what happened next. The cold shoulder. The silence. And the way the band's story started to be rewritten to basically erase his role in it. So after he left, Wilder goes on to create his own critically acclaimed project, Recoil. He found his creative freedom. But Depeche Mode, their sound changed. It got more stripped down, lost that architectural precision. And it's not just fans who noticed. Even later producers for the band would say, yeah, that discipline that used to be there, it was gone. And then this, the final insult. Depeche Mode gets inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2020. And on stage, they don't mention his name. Not once. After everything, it was like the final official act of writing him out of their own history. Just brutal. So it leaves you with this big question, right? About art, about who gets the credit, about legacy. Can you ever really separate a creation from its creator? Because it seems like no matter how hard they tried to erase him, Alan Wilder's ghost, well, it's always going to be there, right inside that machine.